the best of downtown from 7 to 8 a.m. on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket and 92.9theticket.com. This is the best of downtown.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome into the best of downtown on this 25th day of May. Hope your Memorial Day weekend is going well. I'm Rich Kimball along with Brian Stackpole. You're on 92.9 The Ticket, a previously recorded best of downtown with some great interviews from the week that was on the program. We'll talk Celtics today. We'll talk University of Maine basketball with New England Recruiting Report's Adam Finkelstein. We'll talk with music legend Bobby Hart about his great career as a singer and songwriter. And former Black Bear, current Detroit Red Wing Jimmy Howard will join us as well. But we kick things off by talking some Boston Celtics basketball. This week, the draft lottery. To no longtime Celtics fans' surprise, Celtics getting the 6th pick in the upcoming draft. What does that mean for the team, and what does that mean for the possibilities of a deal for somebody like Kevin Love of the Minnesota Timberwolves? We talked all of those things with John Karalis of RedsArmy.com, who opened up our conversation by talking about the optimism over the top 3 pick.
I guess I had deluded myself into thinking that there would be, but I guess history form held. So we just got to deal with it.
Absolutely. And you, thankfully, last night attacked some of the conspiracy theorists out there. All the people are convinced that the NBA masterminds have all planned this out as a way to get LeBron back to Cleveland.
I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense. First of all, if that was the plan, giving them 3 number 1 picks in 4 years is just way too obvious. So that blows it out of the water. But I've never seen a league say they're going to help a small market team land a big name star. And so no league has ever said we need more small market exposure. Now, the NBA wants small market owners to make money, but that's not the same as wanting the Lakers and the Celtics and the Knicks and big market teams to be good. So if you wanted to say conspiracy after the Lakers won the lottery, okay, I can at least listen to that argument, but this is just people upset. Bottom line is, I'm sorry you didn't get what you wanted, but that doesn't mean that something sinister was at stake.
Absolutely. Well, let's start with the options for the Celtics. If they choose to keep this number 6 pick, what do you like? Who do you like? Where should they go?
Well, at this point, am leaning towards Noah Vonleh from Indiana, a legitimate big guy, although not necessarily a power big guy, kind of a stretch big, and that's today's NBA, so I think that would be the way to go. If you're going to believe the mock drafts, it seems like either he or Randall from Kentucky or Marcus Smart are going to be available. I think that based on needs and ability and just the way the league is going, Vonleh is the guy. Randall is kind of redundant as far as the Celtics go. If we have to make the pick and there's no deal, we already kind of have a power forward that's of that size and of that ability, and I still have questions as to whether Randall's game is going to translate to the NBA. And Smart, we already have a point guard, and if you're not going to commit to Rondo in the long run, then maybe you take a look at Marcus Smart, or maybe you take a look at him and you say we're going to cultivate him as a backup, and if he gets too good, we can have a trade chip somewhere down the road. But I'm going to go big on this one.
All right, now if they choose not to keep the 6, what can they get for that? It wouldn't seem that would be enough to get Kevin Love. That you'd have to package more than just that.
It would have to be a bigger package. Yeah, I think with a Kevin Love deal, we're trying to hammer this out ever since that envelope came out, that I think if they're interested in the 6th pick and they like what they see at 6, just because Randall doesn't fit for us, it might fit for Minnesota. And so that would impact what the rest of the deal would be. Normally I thought a Jared Sullinger type would have to be included in the deal. But again, redundancy. Do they want 2 undersized power forwards? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't think so. So if Randall is their guy, if Randall is their target and they like him at 6, you package him with some other players, maybe a Jeff Green, and they can get some help on the wing, and you throw them another future number 1 pick. Could be the Celtics own the Clippers pick next year. Could be something like that. or maybe one of the Brooklyn picks down the road. The Celtics have a lot. They have, I think, 17 first-round draft picks over the next 5 years. So any one of those combined with this year's sixth pick, some players, and maybe the Keith Bogans Magic contract that can be waived and have Minnesota save a little bit of money, that could be an enticing deal. Bottom line, I think the Celtics have a good combination of assets to put together a deal for a Kevin Love, as good a combination as anybody else can put together. It's just a matter of what Minnesota finds most palatable.
We're talking with John Karalis of RedsArmy.com here on Downtown. As soon as the envelope was opened, seemingly, the Rondo trade rumors started up again, and yet, as was pointed out on the website, there aren't many scenarios where this is a better Celtics team without Rondo.
I understand where that's coming from, because Rondo plus the sixth pick can be a deal that gets a superstar in. I don't think he's necessary for a Kevin Love, but if there's another bigger top five type player, I can see where people might go that route. But I don't see the Celtics without Rondo as being any better. People want to throw the argument out that Phil Pressey had a better record as the starter than Rondo, which is just fool's gold. That just doesn't make any sense. So I think that speculation is going to have to settle down. Other teams are going to call Danny Ainge about everybody's availability, Rondo included. And he's going to listen because that's his job. But the key thing to remember with Rondo is he needs to become a free agent next summer in an effort to get himself the most money possible. That is just how the current collective bargaining agreement works. So no team will get a promise from him that he's going to sign an extension if he's traded between draft night and the trade deadline. Everyone's going to be told Rondo is going to become a free agent. So even if Team X calls Danny Ainge and they work out a deal, and Team X goes to Rondo and says, this all hinges on you signing an extension right now, I have questions as to whether he'd do it, and then that really makes a potential trade much more difficult. How many teams are going to give up what's required to give up for Rondo for the potential of the guy leaving almost immediately if this thing is consummated at the trade deadline, or only a year into his tenure, wherever that is, after a trade this summer? I don't see that as being very palatable to other teams.
Thought it was interesting that Danny said earlier today that he's not adverse to taking on a guy who's only got a year left on his contract, being confident that after a year in Boston he could convince them to sign an extension.
You know, that's what you can classify under the mystique, the Celtics mystique, which sounds like, you know, a big pile of steaming you-know-what to some people, but it's legitimate. And you talk about the guys who have come here, and if you ever have the opportunity to ask Brad Stevens about it, or Chris Humphreys about it, or any other guy that's come in, they get it right away. You get it right away. You walk in, you see the banners. You walk in, you see the history. You go play all year, 41 games in front of a crowd in Boston that will cheer for you as if you're in playoff contention, even though they know going in that you're a lottery team. That is impressive. When this team went on the road to playoff teams' homes and saw fewer fans there than they see at home, that means something. So I think Danny Ainge realizes he has a card to play by exposing a player to this kind of atmosphere. When you see all those banners, when you see Bill Russell coming through, when you see all of these legends coming through and talking to you and working with you in practice, that really sways a guy.
And that was our good friend John Karalis of RedsArmy.com talking about the unfortunate draft lottery that occurred again last week. The Boston Celtics had some aspirations, some hopes of getting that number 1 pick, the number 2 pick, 3 even, possibly the 5th. But alas, they got the 6th pick, and they are now going to be game planning on whether or not to draft a player with that selection or to decide to trade that for Kevin Love or another NBA superstar. Time will tell, but we like to thank John for his input there, and also dispelling any conspiracy theorists out there that pick was given to the Cleveland Cavaliers for the third time in 4 years. You're listening to the Best of Downtown here on this 25th day of May 2014. Glad to have you along with us for this edition of the program. We'll take our first break of the Best of Downtown, and on the other side, we'll hear from legendary singer-songwriter Bobby Hart and his conversation with Rich back from last Friday. That and much more still to come as you're listening to the Best of Downtown here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket.
It's Best of Downtown on your Sunday morning. Rich Kimball and Brian Stackpole. Our next guest has had a remarkable career. Has written over 300 hit songs. Songs he's written have sold over 42 million copies, and artists like the Monkees have had smashes with his hits. Jay and the Americans, Little Anthony and the Imperials, even wrote the theme to the soap opera Days of Our Lives. Bobby Hart is his name, part of the longtime duo Boyce and Hart. His partner Tommy Boyce died back in 1994, but Bobby Hart still going strong, the subject of a brand new documentary entitled The Guys Who Wrote Him. And we talked with him about his remarkable career on Friday's show. Well, Bobby, it's funny, as fate would have it, we lined up this interview a couple of days ago, and we do our show from a studio inside a restaurant, and as we wrapped up the show, I walked out into the restaurant, and what do I hear over the speakers but I wonder what she's doing tonight. I get in my car, and I turned on the radio, and the first thing I heard on the satellite radio was Valerie, and I started thinking about the fact that, here we are, 40, 45 years after you guys first had songs hit the charts, and still your music is everywhere. How does it feel to be such a part of really the soundtrack of America?
Well, it's gratifying that people are still listening, playing, and enjoying the music we made way back then, of course. And I made 2 cents every time you hear that.
Even better for you. Because you've written with a number of people through the years, but obviously best known for your work with Tommy Boyce. You guys were together for a long time. What was it about that partnership that made it such a success?
We were friends first, and then we were both writing separately, and then just little by little started to trust each other's writing enough to ask each other's help. And we started collaborating in that way. But over the years, we had a friendship first and a professional partnership second. I think that's what made it so much fun, and why a lot of that music still is good time music.
Now, you were working for a while in one of the hotbeds of popular music in the early 60s, the Brill Building in New York, but really didn't have the big success until you moved to Los Angeles. What was it about that move to the West Coast that made the difference for you?
Well, everything was changing, as you know. In the middle of the 60s, went from a type of music that the first half of the 60s was fading out, and the second half was coming in with the Beatles, with the West Coast psychedelic sound. We had a couple of hits in New York. New York was good for us back there, the Brill Building scene, but that's where we had our first top tenor with Jay and the Americans coming a little bit closer. And we had, I think, a top 30 for Chubby Checker back there and some other chart records. But coming to L.A. was a whole different scene. We had both met and become friends in L.A. I came to L.A. right after high school, 1958. Tried to make a solo career for myself, and Tommy was doing the same thing. He was living in a suburb with his folks, and so that's how we met. Coming back to L.A., of course, we didn't miss the snowstorms. We loved being able to ride on the beach in the park wherever we felt like it, and hanging out. And it was a great time to be back in New York with the music scene changing, going to the Whiskey every night and listening to the Doors and Arthur Lee and Love and some of the new sounds which began to influence our music. So, and also the second thing about coming back to L.A. was that we had signed with Screen Gems Columbia Music. So being signed to a music publisher that was owned by a movie studio gave us a lot of opportunities for television and movie.
Well, and then that big opportunity came when you got a chance to write the music and be part of the Monkees television show. How did that come to pass? And is it true that originally the plan was for you and Tommy to be in the show with a couple of other actors?
That's one of those rumors, you know. The other big one, of course, is the Charles Manson audition for the Monkees. Neither one of those are true. We were hired to produce and write the music for the Monkees pilot show, and for their records, and that's what we wanted to do because we wanted to be artists. But it was made known to us right from the beginning that our job was to be in the studio while those guys were over there in the other studio making the TV shows. We had to be making records.
Well, and you wrote so many smash hits for the Monkees. I'm Not Your Stepping Stone, Valerie, Last Train to Clarksville, of course, the Monkees theme as well. And that was a successful collaboration, but also the start of a long friendship with some of the guys in the Monkees as well.
Yeah, we got on with them all really well right away. Of course, we had the most interaction with Mickey and Davey because they had the natural voices to just be the lead singers of the group for Pop Records, and so our relationship was mostly with them, but we would see the other guys on the set when we go over to visit. And they asked me and my group, the Candy Store Prophets, we were playing L.A. clubs at the time, that we were producing Monkee records, and the producers of the TV show asked us to go out when they went out on their first tour. So we got to know all four guys on the road touring for the first time.
And also ended up, as a result, appearing on a lot of television shows, and not just the music shows, but you guys showed up in things like The Flying Nun, I Dream of Jeannie, Bewitched. That had to be a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. You know, they had when we renegotiated our deal with Screen Gems I guess a couple of years into our stay back in L.A., and part of the deal was they gave us our own record company, which was Voice and Art Aquarian Records, and they gave us a development deal for our own television sitcom, and that's why they were putting us on all of the Screen Gem shows that were running at that time. We were guest starring, gearing up for that.
Now, you've had so many hits through the years, but I wanted to touch on a couple of them that maybe people aren't aware of. One, back many, many years ago, I worked in country radio and had a chance to interview somebody that you really helped in her career, Lane Brody, who took a song you wrote, I believe, with Austin Roberts, not only to the top 20, but became an Academy Award nominee for the great Robert Duvall movie, Tender Mercies. Right,
Tender Mercies. It was, if you remember the movie, whenever they would go to the nightclub scene, Robert Duvall's ex-wife was singing, and she'd always be singing our song. And they did nominate us, and it was a thrill to go sit next to all those movie stars and have that wonderful night at the awards. And also, we got the Golden Globe nomination the same year, so we had a lot of partying that spring.
And, of course, every day somewhere in the world, people hear the theme that you wrote for Days of Our Lives.
It's true. That was one of those Screen Gems assignments. We went over and met the couple who were developing the show, and they told us what they wanted, and we gave them a demo. They said, that's not it. We gave them another demo, and they said, that's not it. And so we had no idea that this show would be running, like 50 years every 5 days a week. We didn't really know what it was. We were more interested in writing hit songs, and so Tommy said, forget about this. We don't have time for that. So I said, well, give me one more shot. I have an idea. I'll just go out and sit behind that Hammond B3 organ out there in the studio, and I'll just play some stuff directly onto the tape that sounds to me in my head like, what kind of stuff my mother used to be in my mother's soaps or radio soaps, And so they accepted that, and that's what's been playing behind the hourglass for all those years.
And that was legendary singer-songwriter Bobby Hart from Downtown with Rich Kimball on last Friday's edition, talking with Rich himself. You're listening to the Best of Downtown here for this Sunday morning, every single Sunday from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. right here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. We'll talk some more basketball after the break with Adam Finkelstein of NewEnglandRecruitingReport.com and also ESPN, as he'll give us the skinny on the two new recruits for the University of Maine men's basketball team, and also how new head coach Bob Walsh is doing in his first month on the job. That and much more still to come here on Best of Downtown, Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket.
Best of Downtown, your Sunday morning. Rich Kimball, Brian Stackpole. New Maine men's basketball coach Bob Walsh has been very busy since his arrival on campus, hiring a couple of new assistant coaches and adding to the roster as well, with 2 new players joining the team in the last week or so. Adam Finkelstein covers college basketball for ESPN and is also the founder and editor of the New England Recruiting Report. And he shared some information with us and insight on these additions to the roster, including Lee Academy's Aaron Calixte.
Yeah, Aaron Calixte at Lee Academy. He's originally from Stoughton, Massachusetts. He went up to prep school at Lee a couple of years ago, and I have thought he was under-recruited all year long. To be honest, sometimes that can happen when you are in what we would consider down here to be points far north. I think sometimes there can be some hidden gems up at places like Lee Academy or Bridgeton Academy back when MCI used to have that program, and I think Calixte is certainly an example of that. He's a mid-major caliber player in my mind, and somebody who's going to be able to play and make an impact right away.
And from what I'm hearing, though he's not a huge guy at 6 foot, but plays a pretty physical style.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got a college-ready body. I mean, he's strong, he's physical. He's one of those guys that you want to have muscle mass and definition, and ideally you want to have that so that it adds to your explosiveness, not takes away from that. And he really fits that to a T. And so he's going to be able to step right in. And the transition from the high school game to the college game is going to be easier for him because he's played at that prep school level and because his body is, as you mentioned, really advanced for someone his age.
The other guy that they brought in here in the last week and a half or so, Kevin Little, what's the story on him?
He's an undersized scoring guard. He's another guy who played in the prep ranks. I think that is really an example of Zach's connection. Zach, he's a good friend of mine. I never pronounce his last name right, but he's, and I think that's a credit to the staff that Bob put together there. When you have Matt and Zach there, I mean, I know that I didn't think that the new head coach there was going to be able to get 2 guys with that level of experience or track record, and Zach coming from New Jersey at FDU, where he worked at the Hoop Group and also at Iona College in nearby New York. He's got roots in that tri-state area, and so Little comes out of a prep school program from the state of New Jersey. He's a New York kid. He's undersized, but he can really, really score the ball, and I think he'll be a nice complement to Aaron, because Aaron is first and foremost a driver. He's improved his catch-and-shoot game. He's improved his pull-up game, but he's at his best when he's getting to the rim. Kevin Little is a guy who can really, really make shots, who can really stretch you. He can make you pay anytime you go under a ball screen when they're playing pick and roll. So together, I think those 2 guys will be able to complement each other really well, or really platoon each other from the point guard position.
Well, there were certainly some concerns about Maine's backcourt, but with these 2 acquisitions, does this become a bit of a strength for the Black Bears?
Well, they're still going to be freshmen, and so I think there's still going to be a transition there. Little is a guy who is going to be, no pun intended, but he needs to get bigger physically. So I think his transition to the college game could potentially take a little longer than Aaron's. But Aaron is a guy who I think by the time, in a year or 2, he's got a chance to be a very, very good player in this league, especially if you know anything about the way Bob Walsh coaches. The defensive end is really a priority for him, but he's unique in some of his philosophies, and Aaron is going to be just an ideal fit for the way that Bob likes to defend. So I think he's going to be a big factor on both ends of the court.
We're talking with Adam Finkelstein, a New England Recruiting Report, ESPN analyst. Bob Walsh, we know his reputation being able to get some very talented guys to go to Rhode Island College, a D3 school, and it sounds like so far using that same skill to bring some guys into the University of Maine, and a program that has lost some very talented players over recent years. How difficult a task will it be for Bob Walsh to make this team competitive in America East?
Well, I think the America East is a league, is a conference with some opportunity right now. If you look at the way the conference kind of broke down last year, I mean, UMass Lowell being able to make the impact that they did in their first year coming out of the NE10. So I would expect Maine to be competitive sooner rather than later. I'm not sure if that'll happen right away next year. What I would expect is them to be perhaps more competitive than some might expect, given some of the postseason transfers that they've had to incur. But I think, you give them it would not surprise me if 2-3 years from now they're right in the middle of the pack of the league and quickly kind of starting to challenge some of those annual contenders, so it seems, for that American East title.
Has too much been made about the fact that this is a big step up from D3 to D1?
Yes. People, one of the things that I was impressed about during the search was I thought that the search, and I don't know much about how the search went about, but a number of the guys on the list were head coaches at the Division 2 or 3 level. I shouldn't say a number. There were a few. And I thought that really showed a lot of, wisdom, because these are guys who have run their own programs, experienced some of the challenges. And remember, Bob Walsh was an assistant and a successful one in the Big East for a long time, but he's also run his own program, and that is, in my mind, far more important than guys who have had success on this particular level. And I think there's some historical relevance for that. You look at somebody like Tim Cluse, who had great success coming from the D2 ranks at Iona. Obviously, Danny Hurley, now at URI, he was an established high school coach, was tremendously successful at Wagner, and now he's got Rhode Island building back up. So I'm a big fan of hiring guys with proven track records who know how to kind of cultivate a program. So I do think there's been way too much of it. And to be honest with you, it's not something that you hear a lot about outside of Maine. So if that's something that's if that's something that's being said in the state of Maine, I think it's really off base.
Well, I get the impression, too, that after having a team for several years that had talent but didn't live up to its potential, that outside of the state of Maine, this hiring is actually given the Black Bears program some increased credibility.
Yeah, no, Bob is respected, far and away beyond not just New England, but well into New York and New Jersey, where he's initially from. And I think, Bob is a basketball coach's basketball coach. I mean, he is very involved in the process of coaching. I think he's got a very kind of intellectual approach to it. Anybody who's read his blog or anything like that knows that. Been to his Dynamic Leadership Academy. And I think those are all very legitimate things. Those aren't bells and whistles that are done for marketing purposes. So he's a heck of a basketball coach, and he's got connections, that range beyond just New England. And as I said, I think being able to add Matt and Zach to the staff only brings that much more credibility, because those guys have both been recruiting this level and recruiting it successfully in recent years. So that only goes to show that another reason why questions about experience on this level, I think, are really kind of without too much of a relevance.
And that was Adam Finkelstein of NewEnglandRecruitingReport.com and ESPN talking some college basketball, and specifically the University of Maine men's basketball program, as they just inked 2 new players to the squad, 2 freshmen incoming to replace some of the departures over the last couple of years for the Black Bears men's basketball squad. You're listening to the Best of Downtown here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. Glad to have you along with us on this early part of the 25th of May, 2014. We'll pause again on this Best of Downtown edition, and on the other side of this break, we'll hear from a Maine legend in terms of the hockey side of things, Jimmy Howard, now the goaltender for the Detroit Red Wings. He'll talk about his career, the last postseason run, who he likes upcoming in the Stanley Cup Eastern and Western Conference Finals, including the Stanley Cup, and also what it's like playing with other former Black Bears like Gustav Nyquist. That's still much more to come. Best of Downtown here on Sports Radio 92.9.
Walking like Egyptians here on your Sunday morning Best of Downtown. Previously recorded edition of the show, 92.9 The Ticket. And 929theticket.com. Be sure and follow us on Twitter at Downtown Rich K. Facebook page, Downtown with Rich Kimball. No show tomorrow as we take the Memorial holiday off, but we're back with a live Downtown on Tuesday, including Jeff Soleri's shoot-around and a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, longtime Eagles guitarist Don Felder will join us to talk about his career Tuesday afternoon here on Downtown. Speaking of guys who have done pretty well for themselves, Jimmy Howard out of the University of Maine, been in pro hockey for 9 years, 5 of those seasons in the National Hockey League as the goaltender for the Detroit Red Wings. We caught up with him earlier this week and began our conversation by talking about the terrific series his Red Wings had against the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, it was. I definitely thought we got off to, on the right foot in the series, winning 1-0, and it was against Boston there in the Garden, but it didn't work out, and with me getting the flu before games 4 and 5, I think it was tough for our team.
Well, you guys had a great stretch this season where we used to just look at the numbers every day and say, well, the Maine guy's getting it done again. Either you were coming up with a big victory in net, or Gustav Nyquist getting a couple of goals. He had an amazing hot streak this year. It's got to be fun to have another former Black Bear out there on the ice with you.
Yeah, Gus is, he's an amazing talent. He's a lot of fun. I always give him jabs, tell him that I'm always the better one that came out of the university. We have a lot of fun, and he just played tremendous for us. When Pav and Z were out, most guys, would probably have trouble finding the back of the net. He just seemed to, just throw the team on his back and just pick up where they left off.
Talk a little bit about your coach, Mike Babcock. What's it like playing for him?
Well, he's very demanding. He expects you to go out there every single night and perform, and I think that's a good thing coming out of your coach. You don't want a coach, who's indecisive or isn't sure what he's going to do with the game plan. So Mike's always really prepared. Night in, night out. With the X's and O's of the game, he always prepares us, tremendously.
Now, we were talking to another coach who's a big fan of yours, Maine football coach Jack Cosgrove. He was telling us you took his football coaching class?
Oh, yeah. I was a kinesiology major back when I was still attending the university, and, I ended up take a couple of electives, and I chose Coach Cosgrove's class.
Now, did he talk more football or more hockey in that class?
He's a huge fan of hockey, but it was a football class, so it was strictly hockey or football.
We're talking with Jimmy Howard of the Detroit Red Wings here on Downtown. So, as you look around at the 4 teams that are still standing, who do you think is the strongest club out there in the playoffs?
Well, I still think LA is one of the the better teams in Chicago. Probably a tough game for them yesterday after winning Friday night against Anaheim and then flying across the country to play a game. So I still like them just the way how defensive they are. But if there's one team that can break through, it's definitely Chicago. But I think the series with Montreal and New York's just taking a huge turn in New York's favor with Carey Price going down.
Absolutely. Hey, can you tell the story, Jimmy? It's a wonderful story that got out on the internet this past week about the young woman undergoing cancer surgery, and you surprised her right before her surgery. Can you tell us about that story?
Well, she didn't have cancer yet, but it ran in her family. Her mom passed away from cancer and from breast cancer, and so she was just getting having a double mastectomy since cancer ran in her family. So she was just trying to be preventative, and I can't take credit for everything that was done. I sort of just showed up. There's a lot of people behind the scenes, especially in the Red Wings organization, that planned it all up, and I showed up, and since I was their favorite player, and just surprised her with flowers. So it was really touching, and hopefully took her mind off the surgery that she was going in for this morning.
Absolutely. We're also happy to report a couple of weeks ago that they found your head, the big bobblehead that was stolen. What is happening there?
The funny thing is I think the people who actually took it got prosecuted.
Wow.
Since they're trying to clean up downtown, so downtown Detroit. So they're not being very lenient anymore.
So keep that Jimmy Howard head where it belongs, people. Remember that. Well, Jimmy, it's great talking with you. Congratulations on another successful season. We wish you much success in the future, and thanks as always for making some time for us this afternoon.
No problem. My pleasure.
And that was former University of Maine goaltender Jimmy Howard, who's currently the Detroit Red Wings netminder. They got bounced in the Eastern Conference playoffs by the Boston Bruins, but had a very good season, making it as an 8th seed in the playoffs. and also bright things ahead for Jimmy and also former University of Maine forward Gustav Nyquist. You're listening to the Best of Downtown here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. Glad to have you alongside us this afternoon for this edition. We'll take another break on the program, and on the other side, we'll talk with the Star Tribune and Minneapolis' writer Michael Rand on the Kevin Love situation, what it might take to get him dealt from the Timberwolves to another NBA franchise. Michael Rand will explain that and much more coming up after the break here on Sports Radio 92.9.
Memorial Day weekend, Best of Downtown on your Sunday morning. Rich Kimball and Brian Stackpole here with you. Lots to talk about what the Celtics might do now that we know they have the 6th pick in the NBA draft. A lot of that talk centers on Minnesota Timberwolves' Kevin Love. Can the Celtics make a deal happen? What might it take? Those were among the questions we asked of Michael Rand, who covers the T-Wolves for the Minneapolis Star Tribune.
You know, it's a good question. I don't know exactly what is going to be the package the Wolves are looking for if and when they do and decide to pull the trigger on a trade. I think a trade at this point is inevitable, but I don't know if they feel exactly that way. I hope they do because I think that's really the best solution. What's it gonna take? I think to me, any package starts with one good young player, one okay player, and a couple of pretty high draft picks. I think that's kind of your baseline for starting how you're going to get Kevin Love.
Would the Wolves be interested in a guy who scores 35 one night and then disappears the next? Because Jeff Green would look great out there, I think.
I don't know if they would or not. They've had guys like that in the past, that's for sure. I don't think it's worked out. I don't know if that kind of guy is exactly who they're looking for, but it really will be interesting. I know the Celtics obviously have a lot of assets built up from the trading with the Nets and then their own picks. I don't know if the Wolves are going to be interested in a straight swap for high picks. That tends to be kind of risky unless there was somebody that they absolutely fell in love with. So to me the trade it could end up getting kind of complicated because I don't know if there's one perfect trade partner out there. I wonder if eventually they're going to have to get a couple of different teams into the mix to work some kind of three-way trade to get everything they're going to want to get out of this.
Well, we obviously everybody here in New England loves his game from afar. What kind of a guy is he?
He's a pretty good guy. I don't think he's been fully embraced here. I mean, if the natural comparison, not just for here, but also for history's sake, is Kevin Garnett, another Kevin from Minnesota who wound up going to Boston. He's not that kind of leader, and he hasn't been here as long as Garnett was. He's been here about half that time, and he's never taken them to the playoffs. So I think as much as fans here recognize his individual talent and greatness on a certain level, I think they're also a little bit wary of him because I think they've felt like he might be out the door from day one, and also I think there's a perception from some folks here that he's more interested in statistics than he is in winning. So I think perception-wise, he's liked but not loved here, and I think that's I think that's fair. I think he's earned that basically.
Have the fans there forgiven Kevin McHale yet?
I don't know. I think they did. Because if you look back at that, you look back at the Garnett trade, it really wasn't a terrible trade. What made it bad was basically the fact that they bailed on Al Jefferson so quick after that, partially because they didn't feel like he could play with Kevin Love, that there was two similar guys, neither of whom were gifted defensively. And I think the biggest knock that you'll find on Love, kind of bridging there, is defensively he's not the player that Garnett, not even close to that, and it's a deficiency for him. He is a scorer of the highest magnitude. He can score in so many different ways, but defensively there are plenty of shortcomings there.
We're talking with Michael Rand of the Minneapolis Star Tribune. If they make a deal for Kevin Love, do you think that's something that'll happen before the draft?
I think if they're going to move him, that would be my inclination. Is first they got to figure out. The draft lottery's done. That's one obstacle out of the way. Second obstacle is they got to get a coach, and that could happen soon too. It sounds like with the situation with Memphis and Dave Yeager, they've got permission to talk to him. Sounds like that's going fairly well. They're trying to I think any talk right now is about compensation. So once they get that into place, I think they really turn their attention to, okay, what are we really going to do with Kevin Love? And I think they got to, if they're going to deal him this offseason, it's got to be before the draft because that gives them the most amount of flexibility. So I don't know. Glenn Taylor, the owner, has said it won't be before the draft, but I think we've all seen enough trades go down to know that anything that these guys are saying at this point is just trying to build up leverage. So I would think that it's going to, if it makes any sense at all, it's going to happen before the draft.
While we've got you on the phone, I want to talk about a couple other things. The big news of the Super Bowl number 52 coming to Minneapolis. That's got to be exciting.
Very cool, yeah. And it was a little bit of an upset. I think the people running the bid here felt good about their chances, but if you looked state by state and looked around the country, I think a lot of people thought New Orleans was going to get it just because of some of their Super Bowl history and the fact that they had a big tricentennial coming up in 2018. So yeah, it's really a fun thing. You always like to have big events like that in your community. We've got a bunch of them coming up here. We got the All-Star Game here in Minnesota this year. We've got the Ryder Cup coming to Minnesota in 2 years, and then we got the Super Bowl in 2018. So there's a lot of it's going to be a pretty good run here in the next few years, especially if you love sports and work in the sports media. It should be a lot of fun stuff in our backyard right now.
Well, and I always get a kick out of some of the national media, especially the guys based in New York, to hear them talk. You would think that Minneapolis is waiting for the highway to come through and get indoor plumbing, right, the way they talk. And these guys apparently have never been to Minneapolis or St. Paul, tremendous cities, and certainly with a lot more amenities than some better-known cities around the country.
Yeah, we like to think so. I mean, I enjoy living here. I've lived here for hopefully the better part of 20 years now, and I wouldn't still be here if I didn't think that. But yeah, you're right. There's a certain flyover country joke that gets made, and I think the cold contributes to some of that too, just because it's a natural target for people to poke fun at. It's true. It's abysmally cold here in the winter, but right now it's gorgeous, 75. I mean, it's like most of the time here it's pretty nice. So we'll take the jokes, but we'll be very satisfied with living here too.
All right, now before we let you go, I have to ask this because I was reading the story you wrote yesterday. Can you help us out if we want to get our hands on one of those bathroom troughs from the Metrodome?
I can't personally help you, but I could point you to a website that will help you. Yes, they're being auctioned off as we speak. I think the bidding ends in about 2.5 hours.
Oh, my.
6 o'clock tonight. Somebody got a hold of a bunch of those trough-style urinals from the Metrodome, which kind of became legendary just because they're, anytime you have a stainless steel trough that you have to, sit next to 5 guys and go to the bathroom at the same time, it kind of takes on, they kind of become a little bit of a legend in their own right. So yeah, I think there's auctioning off 6 of them, and I think unfortunately I might have driven up the price by writing about them. They were all the bids yesterday were about $5 to $10, and now they're up around $100 each. So I think the secret's out, and so if you really want to get your hands on them, you're going to have to pay the price.
And that was Michael Rand of the Star Tribune in Minneapolis, Minnesota, talking about Kevin Love and what it might take to deal that forward. They all-star forward away from the Timberwolves to another NBA franchise. You're listening to the Best of Downtown here for the 25th day of May, 2014. We'll take a break, and on the other side, we'll wrap up this show, tell you what's to come on Monday and Tuesday of this program, and much more. You're listening to Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket.
That's going to do it for the Best of Downtown on your Sunday morning. Thank you for being with us here. And hope the rest of your weekend goes well, Memorial Day and all that. Thanks to the folks on the show today, John Karalis, our go-to Celtics guy, RedsArmy.com. Singer-songwriter Bobby Hart, who joined us from Los Angeles. Adam Finkelstein of ESPN and the New England Recruiting Report. Detroit Red Wings goaltender Jimmy Howard, and Michael Rand of the Minneapolis Star Tribune for visiting with us as well. Got a big show lined up for you Tuesday. Now, tomorrow we're taking the holiday off, no Memorial Day show, but we're back with a live downtown Tuesday afternoon, including the longtime guitarist for the Eagles, Don Felder. We'll talk about his career, both as a member of the group, his scathing book about his time with the Eagles and what he's doing these days, which includes, by the way, an appearance with Styx and Foreigner on the Bangor waterfront later on this summer as part of the Waterfront Concert Series. Jeff Solari will have the shoot-around, Dennis Price with an entertainment report, and a social media minute as well with Tobin Slavin. That's all on our next live downtown Tuesday afternoon from 4 until 6. Hope the rest of your holiday weekend goes well. Travel safely out there, and we'll see you Tuesday afternoon at 4 here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket.
Don't hang around and let your problems surround you. There are movie shows.